Welcome to another episode of Tailored Healing TV. I am your host, Taylor, and here we discuss all things esoteric, the occult realm, the metaphysical world, the future of tech and AI, and any burning questions you have about the Matrix. Today, we're going to cover a very popular topic that I probably see on the internet every day, a question that perplexes many and that a lot of people still can't answer to this day. Are we in a simulation? The funniest way that I can think to start to answer this story is to give you a little anecdote about when I was 11 and the game that I was addicted to, The Sims. If you guys are familiar with The Sims, it is a game where you're living out an actual reality through selected avatars and characters that you can customize to yourself. Through different towns, they can live out different experiences. And as the game has expanded over years, you can have extremely specific experiences. There are people who are custom content creators who add real life things into the game, and it just becomes very much like real life. So when I used to play the game, if you were a millennial, we had outside, and then when we got access to computers and computer games, it changed the world. I used to go over my best friend's house and we would play the game for like 11 hours straight. I remember we even had like the little heat fans that you would put under the laptop, and we would sit there and play all day long. Very strange to think that 11 years old, I was already immersing myself into other realities like so many other kids, but I didn't really understand the dexterity of it till I got much older. Now, what is interesting is the last time I actually played the game was in 2020 when COVID started. A very specific time in the world where everything turned on its axis, everything changed, and we were told all of a sudden we had to stay inside. And a lot of people answered and they listened. To think that there is a commanding force that gives you a source code to follow, and we do it without question, is very much proof that we may indeed be living in a simulation. I've observed this reality for a very long time, and in 2020, when I finally decided to stop playing the game, I think I just got caught up in the idea that I was tired of living someone else's reality instead of my own. As someone who played The Sims, I've explored everything from cheat codes to expansion packs. The cheat codes were always fun because they were always associated with money. I remember specifically the code Motherload. I got it from a book that they used to sell. I don't know if you guys remember that, but if you did play like the earliest versions of The Sims, eventually I think by The Sims 3, they had a book that gave cheat codes. It gave storylines for all of the characters. They even had, I believe, like the Montagues and the Capulets, like Romeo and Juliet, Bella and Mortimer Goth, Nancy and Jeffrey Landgrab. They all had their own lives. And it's important to remember that each character is a set of codes. The same way humans, we have our own codes, running DNA and patterns of repeating things in our lives amongst our parents, our creators, and then their creators who came before them. In the earliest game, it was very low pixelation, right? It was not very detailed. Over time, it would go on to get much better. These were also the days where you had to upload like 7 different CDs on your home computer just in order to get the game to work. They've upgraded since then. I believe now you could just stream directly through Origin. But to think that that much information was encoded into disk that we uploaded and we became a part of now doesn't make this whole AI reality we live in seem too eerie. Think about all the commands that we take in life, all of the programming that we're given constantly on a daily basis. Go here, do this, work here, do that. And people answer and they listen. And collectively, the programming has advanced over the years as we've been embedded with many hints and many clues in Hollywood. I've shown a lot in my TikTok videos, but everything from movies like Ex Machina to understanding how movies like The Bionic Woman or Smart House on Disney Channel were here to shape a future reality, one where the feminine spirit would become an android or a robot. Transhumanism in itself being a byproduct of a game that was actually originated not to simulate human beings and their experience, but The Sims was actually built to imitate city infrastructure. I think that's like a really wild thing to think about. When I started really researching into The Sims, the creator, and why they were making it, well, they needed, just like the same way an architect would design the layout of a place, they use computer generated simulations to lay out a city, to see power grids and maps. And when I really sat there and thought about it, I said, well, if you can simulate a reality based on the architecture and the design, then reality must not be any different because even the very beginning stages of The Sims where they were pixelated and they didn't have too much detail to their faces, everything was very like boxy. That makes me think of the way that we construct reality. And the brain is so intricate in the way that we understand and we perceive information that when we take on an idea, we think it's brand new. But think about how we identify smells and sounds, and we give it this familiar feeling based on something that we've already experienced. That shows you how vast our consciousness is. And now, as AI and tech is rapidly advancing, we're looking at it as if it's something new. But from what I see, at least in my own perspective, it's simply an advancement of being able to picture a more vivid reality, one where we were always in tune, but one we've been separated from by sources of light. When I think about a simulation, I think it's funny because my branding obviously points to everything the Matrix is about entering the rabbit hole or the wormhole or the toroidal field to understand our cosmic existence. And it's very challenging sometimes to wrap these very big ideas into such short videos and small information because how do you tell someone that we live in a simulated reality? How do you tell them that everything that they may perceive is in fact an illusion? I mean, even the oldest, even the oldest cultures that we have shown that illusion exists and the imagination is vivid and the dream world is just as real as what we call reality. But when we're in this base experience, this very dense and material realm, we tend to box things up. And we box them up in such a way that we think that there is no detail into the way this entire universe was constructed. Another thing is we're always looking for someone to blame or someone to point the finger at. Am I going to ignore the fact that there are controllers in this realm who seem to hold a very strong power of being able to manipulate reality at will because of what people consign to or what they agree to, sometimes without knowing? Course, I know that those people are out there. However, I don't believe the focus should be on them. It should just be to have an awareness that control happens when power is given over. And the greatest power that we have is that within ourselves. So, going back a little bit to the Sims and expansion packs, looking back at playing the game, I realized that this is what life is. The more you're able to decode and break apart the material of something, the same way early philosophers and early scientists will take a look at the human brain, they would analyze what different parts of it were for what cells or what neurons affected other ones. I feel like the way that we are breaking down reality and we're decoding where a lot of these concepts were first studied and started. It's not something new that we're discovering. Maybe it's tapping into something ancient that's always been there. And because this reality is layered with so many distractions and distortions, I kind of compare it to like the broken glass theory. So if you had a piece of glass or a mirror and you smashed it, it would go into a million pieces, a million different fractals. But the thing is, it's all the same mirror. It's just different representations of one whole. Very similar to the story they tell you in Gnosticism about Sophia and the Pleroma, the divine Aeon who fell from the heavens and split herself in an attempt to recreate wholeness and created what is referred to, I guess, now as physical matter or the demiurge. And the demiurge is the false light or the false creator. So, from her own divine wisdom, she split herself and in doing so created this material world that we live in. Now, whenever I hear Gnostics explain it, it really sounds like the blame game to me. But this is coming from a woman who has given birth to two children, who has fallen in love, who has fallen a little vulnerable sometimes and a little weak to her own desire for love and will. And as I've developed specifically myself over the years and gotten stronger and seeing what it is I truly desire and want, the love that I've looked to fulfill, in other people in the past is really something that I'm giving back to myself now. And that light source and that wisdom that I've learned to pass on to others comes from that universal love that we all really are in tune with and seek because when we think about love, especially within terms of a simulation, it's not so much as a feeling, it's a knowing. And love being the quantum center of our reality, why we do anything because of a universal oneness, not a romantic love, a bond and a connection. The same way in bank accounts we have bonds. And it's weird that I have to use it as a comparison, but it's very true that even the way that we use language is just a mimicry of the reality and how it runs. And so when I think about The Sims, I also think about the movie Free Guy or the Truman Show, or the Barbie movie. There's so many examples now that keep telling us exactly what we live in, but we blatantly ignore it. To be in a simulation and have the choice, do you want to stay asleep or do you want to awaken? Is one of the hardest choices I think anyone could have. I was fortunate enough in my own experience to be guided through sacred medicine. And sacred medicine sometimes feels like a curse to me, but it was in fact a gift because it allowed me to see beyond the physical realm and enter into the spirit realm, maybe just for a few hours. But time also collapsed, so I wasn't paying attention to time. And my consciousness expanded so wide that nature started speaking to me again. And think about how dense this world has become, how integrated we've gotten with studio lights and cameras and microphones that we've forgotten that our original connection has never been far from us. What we seek has always been with us. And so, under these experiences, I would see, well, our life is so much more than we can see scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through a phone. And now understanding what really happened in 2020, not just the rescinding of autonomy. It wasn't just people giving up their rights or even their experience as human beings. It was the ability to manipulate and control through perception, like 2020 vision. And so this veil that seemed to be put over the collective public, and not everybody, but a lot of people, kept people from seeing the very massive changes that had been implemented in small ways over time, but took its ultimate height in this year 2020. 5 years later, after being on TikTok, after observing social media, after giving birth to two children, and looking at the world around me, one thing that I can positively say is that you were changed whether you liked it or not between the last 5 years. Some people are going in the direction of one version of the spiral. The other people are going back in the other direction. But the funny thing is, in a simulation, when it comes to the wheel of time, there's no separation. It's simply different perspectives in the same shape. So if we were all sitting in a universal circle, some people are at one end, some people are another, but we are all still connected even through light and dark matter, those who can see, those who cannot, and those who are the bridge in between. Um, those people are coming forward now, and I think that that's super important when understanding where and how the world is moving. To live in a simulation, you have some people who come forward and say, well, nothing really matters. But then we still wake up every day. We wake up with longing, with purpose, with desire, with questions, because our soul is longing to expand. Now, not everybody in this lifetime is here to do the same thing. Some people are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, and that's okay. I've learned that even the desire to want to change other people or get them to understand what the matrix is, that is a longing for the old ways. The new ways are really still the old ways. The same way elders always have lessons to pass down to the young, and the young repeat them thinking that they know better. And it's really the same. Now, collectively, obviously, we have had a line and generation of ancestors who've been a product of brainwashing, a product of indoctrination, a product of religion that's constructing as a false light, but operating as if it's a true light, and having control over everything from our banking systems to our school curriculums to the technological realm. And the cheat codes that we truly would need, a lot of them are gate kept, and only those who know how to construct these ideas formally into a way that's digestible for the public, those are the people that we're waiting on to come forward. I know that I'm one of them, and I've had a few teachers who are doing the same. But it's difficult because when you deconstruct someone's reality and then mold it into your own image, and they still question, well, who am I? That becomes the challenge, but also the journey to enlightenment or awakening. Whenever I think about what a simulation is, and I'll actually look up the etymology of it, I think of a stage play, a grand stage that's going on. And so we're watching things constantly happen in reality, and emotionally, people gravitate towards the things that affect their psyche or their trauma. Then they're using this device that we are on every single day, scrolling, waiting for a dopamine rush, waiting for some form of connection, or waiting for something to make us feel alive again. But I will tell you, as someone who started off as a wellness practitioner before I started podcasting, before I made TikTok videos and decoded patterns, I was very big on understanding why our nervous system needs healing more than anything, because the emotions are triggered, and that is what is controlling the software. The software is no different than your iOS updating, every few months or every few weeks because of the internal glitches. And so, as we are constantly fed programming every day, glitches are possible. For our psyche to be interrupted or fed a worm or a virus or a program that distorts what the reality actually is. And if you can't recognize the virus, it can continue to replicate itself in other ways in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. So, even knowing that, it's just like, okay, well, what do we do from here? To me, continuous learning, not just learning in books or writing things down or reading, because that's a question I'm asked very often. Well, Taylor, what books do you read? How did you become awakened? I didn't become awakened by reading a book. It just happened. It just happened because my parents had a plan for me. I didn't follow that plan. And it was very painful to not follow that plan. I know it might sound like a beautiful, tragic journey to enlightenment, but honestly, every step of this journey has been extremely painful. Fortunately, I studied alchemy for a long time. When I was even younger, I used to write, I want to transmute the pain that I feel into healing for others. Little did I know my entire life would be the catalyst to creating this. Everything from my first LSD trip to consuming psilocybin at 32 weeks pregnant, to understanding the divine cosmos that lie within the feminine consciousness, that our womb is our memory and our memories are the gates, and those gates are portals to other dimensions. And those dimensions are not somewhere you physically leave, but somewhere where it's constructed in the mind and the body, and how you cleanse your temple or your dimension or your space is important to the way that you navigate the reality. Because if you're living in a house, do you operate better when the house is dirty? Do you feel activated? Do you feel alive when your laundry isn't clean, when the house is a mess, when you feel a mess on the inside? You have no self-care practice. You're not looking at yourself and saying, what is it that I truly want? Not money, not fame, not love, but what is it that I really desire in life, and why do I desire it? Am I looking at the patterns of my own life? Am I doing what grandma did? Is grandma doing what mom did? Are we repeating anything generational here, that it's time to start anew? Is it time to shed? When I started decoding and sharing my decodes on TikTok, I didn't quite fully understand what a simulation or a matrix was. I started looking into the etymology. What does matrix mean? Why is it related to the words matter and matriarch and mother? And then one day it just clicked. We come from our mother's womb to be reborn into this life again. The last place we wanted for nothing was within our mother's womb. And so to simulate that experience again, but in a false light, can create this form of separateness, not realizing that this is an experience of one. And so often we split it. It's us versus them, black versus white, poor versus rich. And if this is one experience, this means that everything around us is just a fractal illusion. It means that even our friends and our family members are just mirrors of lives that we could have lived. And this is why it's so important, I think, to not judge anyone based on where they are, because at any point you can step in and become a different part of the simulated experience. It's about what you are and what you're doing. Mostly everybody has seen The Truman Show. They've seen Free Guy. They understand that our lives are scripted very much like Sims characters. The same way, if you interact with one of them and you do something different from the programming, you can divert a timeline. It's the same thing with the way you interact in everyday life when you choose something that's not programmed for you necessarily. They say the whole thing about fate and free will comes in. If the path was already written for you, then do we really get a choice? And I believe we do. It's the road of forking paths. There are many roads you can choose. Each one has already created a ripple, it's already created a timeline. But when you become present and you understand that all timelines exist, you're not sitting around scared about the future. A lot of people also immediately want to know, well, what do I do with this information now that I know that we're in a simulation and nothing is real and it's all a matrix and it's all an illusion? How do I pay my bills? I say that with so much respect, but also a little bit of light humor, because Even to understand the monetary system can be extremely difficult when people are programmed to live in a scarcity mindset, not realizing that knowledge is wealth and that wealth is knowledge, right? They're one and the same. How you use your light source energy becomes your source of wealth. But if you never learn how to use it, you never break the programming. So it's by no coincidence right now that we have these Google Veo 3 videos asking, am I a prompt? Think about how that's impacting people's psyche, how they're interacting with videos that they see like that, questioning their own reality. Not everybody has been given the chance to all of a sudden open their third eye, as they say. Even I don't call that experience opening my third eye. I just ask questions. I just became aware to the world around me, and I wonder every day. Even though thermodynamics and the material realm is it's tangible, right? It's something I can knock on, it's something I can feel, I can taste, but something in me still questions, is this reality? And I think the easiest way that you can start to, not let those kinds of questions overwhelm you is to tune into your breath, because it's the one thing that is anchoring you here right now. You left amniotic fluid to be born into this world, and when you took your first breath, you entered into another world because your mother's womb was a dimension all itself. And so, anchoring into that breath, having a wellness practice before you dive into any books, before you dive into exploring the quantum realm and doing decodes on the latest Marvel movie and how, these government films are showing us in real time how quantum reality works. Take care of yourself, cleanse your temple, take time away from technology, take time away from social media. Um, Knowledge is great. Knowledge is fun. I truly view where we are right now in this world as a gift. But at the same time, the same way some tools can be harmful if you overuse them or use them too much, everything in moderation. The key to knowing yourself in a simulation is understanding your codes. And I say your codes by your patterns, the things that you may want in life that you haven't acted on, the things that drive you without feeling like a job, the things that may enlighten you and bring about this airy sense of being, one that doesn't harp itself down with I can't, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough, one that opens up doors and horizons. It's really good to have also people around you who understand you. And I know not everybody feels as privileged to do so, which is why I created spaces like this in Discord, because we all notice patterns and everybody's just trying to make sense of what their place in this is. And to that, I say, your place is in discovery, to awakening to the self, to realize that you are all that there is, but in you, there is me. And in me, there is you, and we are all reflections of one another, having the same cosmic experience, just fine tuned to your personal blueprint. It's not easy taking on this information, I'm not gonna lie. I would never come on here on any platform, especially my own, and paint the world as if it's sunshine and rainbows all the time. It is light, and light does not always come in the form of a pretty rainbow. Sometimes it comes in the form of darkness. Sometimes that darkness is absorbed, and people cannot handle the weight of how it anchors us into its own reality. Because just like light is a source energy that feeds off of the absorption of others' energy, it doesn't have sentience, it's not emotions, it's something much more omnipresent, I believe. Even when we discuss who the elite are and who's running the world, without going too deep into those conversations, all I can say is I don't think it's something worldly that we can explain here in the material realm. It's something outside of space and time. It's something outside of the linear motion of what we think our day to day is. So, one of the ways that I've adjusted to all of this is having grounding practices. For me, I've observed my birth chart. I've observed my etiology chart, my human design, because I want to know there must be something that drew me towards these mysteries, but didn't put me in some sort of cult group or a mystery school. I uncovered the mysteries for myself. And a lot of it are Saturnian themes around my life, discipline and control, and understanding that sometimes you have to self initiate. And once you self initiate, you become the alchemist of your own journey. There will be people all over the world who tell you conspiracy theories or stories and do nothing with it, and they stay spiraling and stuck for the rest of their lives. This doesn't mean anything is wrong with them. It just means on this path, particularly, they haven't learned how to fully take the grasp of the spiraling force and energy that is Kundalini, that is key energy, and learn how to move it through the body from the base of the spine to the crown chakra and be able to keep that energy flowing and moving. For some people, it can stay stuck. Sometimes you can have an overactive crown, sometimes you can have an overactive root. So, this is why spiritual wellness practices come forth. And it's also funny that we even call them spiritual practices because this entire experience is spiritual. We live in the carnal flesh version of it. We think all it is, these bodies. And while it is fun to walk around in avatars created of different forms of light waves and color and sound, this is our specific experience, and how we live it is based on the life that we want, the lives that we may have already had. It's a joy for me to do what I do. I never thought little 11-year-old me who spent hours living out somebody else's experience. And by someone, I literally mean a character in a game. I never would have thought that I'd be here sitting in front of studio lights with my own website, with my own business, talking about the mysteries of the Matrix. Yet somehow I always knew. One of my other first computer games was a game called Clue Finders, and it was all about these fourth graders unlocking the mysteries of the Egyptian pyramid. So, when it comes to like coding yourself, those are the things I pay attention to, my past, memorable things that created a core memory, what really shaped me into making me who I am. And that's what I attempt to guide people with decodes. I use pop culture because it's easiest to understand why entertainment is so big in the Matrix. You need a form of programming to create attachment, to create feeling, to create emotion. And emotion drives to harvest. And that harvested energy is used in a myriad of ways if you're not using it for yourself. Reclaiming personal sovereignty is my life's mission, and to teach others to do the same. And I don't mean through paper, though it is a part of it to understand, the monetary system, learning how, we can have our own land, have our own banks. That is a huge part of it. But reclaiming spiritual sovereignty, one is to remember our divine existence. When I gave birth, both times, which were completely different, I brought both my children into this material realm from the spirit realm. And even understanding the power in doing that is minimized every single day by the entire world, I realize the source of creation is being ignored because of the false light. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because it exists in every one of us. We are a true expression of that divine light. We walk around and we say, oh, we're just human, just having a human experience. Yeah, you are a human, a hue of light, a hue of radiant vibration entrapped in what we perceive with the mind's eye, which is very interesting the way that the brain works and perceives light, because even the iris of your eye under psychedelic experiences absorbs light. Your pupil dilates as it takes on more light source information. This is also why, you have people come out of like psychedelic trips telling you, they saw aliens, or they saw luminescent skin, or things that our regular reality can't conceive because we are limited in our minds here. So awakening your mind, awakening your creativity, awakening your exploration opens up those gateways and doors. And there's not one specific way to do it. Everybody has a different pattern. Everybody has a different way that they move throughout the reality. But finding yourself in it, your own place and what you're here to do, I believe is the most important part of this entire journey. Do not let the word simulation scare you. Instead, I advise you to journal. Ask yourself what you believe a simulation is and what it means for you in this reality. Become aware of any feelings that you may have around it, and ask yourself, are those feelings programmed? Was it something that you saw somewhere and you formulated an idea about it, or did it come straight from you? If you can answer that, that can start guiding you on the path to understanding more about yourself, because everyday programs are thrown at us. Every day we're given something new to believe about relationships, about the world, about our governments, about everyday life. And based on what we choose in that reality, if we choose at all, it can drive us towards one narrative or another. But the pen is back in your hands. You are now the author of your story. Even if you came here to watch my video today, there is something in you that yearns to connect with who you are. The you that you may think is gone, or that doesn't exist, or has some magical form of enlightenment, but guess what? It lives in you. It's not separate. It is in you. So thank you for watching today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed this chat about simulations and you learned a little something today. Don't forget that journal prompt I gave you. If you're interested in receiving a decode for yourself or even applying for my personal mentorship, you can check them out today at tailoredhealingcollective.com. There you can find my literary resources like The Coded Reality or Gematria Unveiled. You can also check out affirmation tracks that I have, as well as my podcast, the Tailored Healing Collective podcast. So until next time, take care of yourselves, stay balanced in vibrations, and let love lead the way. Peace. Peace.